Welcome to our first episode of Electronic Cafe for 2024, or interview episode, that is. As you know, Mark and I have been very fortunate to interview some massive names, Vince Clarke, Andy McCluskey, etc., and they're amazing, and we absolutely love it. But we also realise that, one of the reasons we started this was to give a platform to emerging bands or artists that we want to showcase for your ears to be made happy. So we got a MP3 file from a band called ZERO33. Mark and I just started messaging each other going, have you heard this? Yeah, it's great. We really like it. Turned out to be really nice guys. So they've got an album coming out very soon. So we thought we'd have a chat with them. And I don't know about you, mate. I think, one, they were a great bunch of fellas, but it's interesting with these guys, don't you think? It's not just their music that's great, but and you can probably talk a bit about the way they packaged everything as well.
Yeah, I mean, we met Phil, the drummer, a couple of times. He's a really nice guy. The interview, they talk about, how they got together, or they got back together again, because they were a band, 20 odd years ago, and they kind of got back together, got signed, started bringing 20 years of influences back into their music, which is interesting. And the touch points are everything that we like. I mean, they come from Liverpool, but I mean, obviously there's Echo and the Bunnymen in there. There's the new wavy sound of the Furs and Teardrop Explodes. I mean, there's a lot of influences there. And they brought with it like 25 years worth of experience. And I think it's just, the music they're producing is just like a hybrid of everything. And we really love it, and they've brought an album out in 2022 called The Sound of Year Zero. They've got a new album coming out this year very shortly called Working Class Psychedelia, and we just think the Electronic Cafe, you'll be really interested to hear what they're doing.
No, I agree. I think, and also they're really smart, funny guys, and as you said, they've got experience. Yeah, they're a great bunch of guys. You say, I think the EC family will love to hear them. So should we dive in and show them the interview that we had with the guys?
Yeah, let's do it. 033 on the Electronic Cafe. Enjoy.
So people, because the idea of this is to get people to get to meet three cool guys, but also, hear the music.
5 cool guys, Andy.
Saturday night, chemical smiles and the kiss of a knife, a sudden insight. Here comes the black light.
Hey everyone, welcome to our very first interview edition of Electronic Cafe for 2024. Now, as you know, we love interviewing bands that we feel more people should know about. And when our guest today sent Mark and I a copy of their forthcoming album, we thought, wow, people need to hear these guys. So welcome, Phil, Gareth and Andy from ZERO33 to the Electronic Cafe. It's lovely to have you here, guys.
Yes.
And look, congrats on the album that's coming out, Working Class Psychedelia. We loved it so much, we just wanted to get you guys on. You must be super pleased with it.
Yeah, and I think what we were really pleased with was it kind of came really quickly. We did the first album, and it just kind of, you have this whole thing, people saying like second album kind of stuff, and it just kept going basically.
The opposite.
And it was fun, and it's only a kind of mini LP, but the process probably quicker than the first one, certainly.
Yeah.
And we just thought we got to about the stage where we thought, let's put this out now. Rather than kind of waiting for a full kind of 12-track album. The songs kind of all intertwine with each other, and it's like it felt done.
It does. Brilliant. And I think it's Working Class Psychedelia. Andy, where did that title come from, mate?
Well, pretty much when we're doing stuff, it's very collective. So things just spring up. Like one person says one thing, another says another, and it kind of just sat right. It basically reflects our attitude towards generally society's being a bit too tick box and a bit too regimented, and we just think people should get out that box and go out and do things that aren't necessarily comfortable or automated or artificial, and go and actually do things. And also, we were listening to a lot of psychedelic music
Right.
prior to this, not in the intention to be influenced by it, but just like, oh my God, have you heard this? And we have our own little Zoom group, and it is like, we'll just like try and out freak each other by going, have you seen this? Have you seen that? I mean, everything. Gareth's a big fan of krautrock, which I'd never really heard of, and it's like, oh my God, and it's just like, wow. And so we're discovering new things by influencing each other as well. So it kind of, one, we are working class and we're proud. Two, we did do a bit of naughty in the past, and we appreciate the sort of expansive mind.
Yeah, I get it. That's great. And I think the album, Gareth, what's the official launch date? Is it
2nd of February?
And is it going to be on our favourite format, vinyl?
We're thinking about. There's a few things which I can't quite talk about at the moment, but the plan, again, we were saying earlier before the interview, we're all kind of into the aesthetic side of things, and many of us are designers within the band and stuff. So that's the goal. But what we need to do is we need to speak to the record company and kind of say, listen, you know, this is the way forward. So we're kind of in talks with doing that at the moment.
Stressing over power, stressing about your lives, tapping through your journey's lives. It's a kind of living.
But again, it's got to be more than just putting something out quickly. You know, the imagery's got to be fabulous. It's got to be, you know, a good grammage of vinyl if we're going to do it. You know, and the whole thing's got to look good. So I'm sure it's going to happen. At the moment, we're just getting the stuff out there, and then we're going to take it from there. But we're definitely in talks about doing it. Yeah.
You mentioned the artwork. I mean, the picture behind you is the artwork that has been used on the social media and passed around. We spoke just before we started recording this about the artwork. I mean, can you explain that picture again? I think it's a fascinating picture.
Yeah, so that was a little 50s toy I found in my back garden.
Love that.
Literally dug it up, and it was, you know, the way sometimes when you do, and I think the interesting thing about this, like, I know there was an old guy who lived in my house before me, and he died, and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking that was probably one of his children or something. But I just literally put it on the fence and took a photograph with my iPhone, and that's what came out. And I thought, and I did another one, which is a side-on one. No fancy cameras, no anything. But the picture just kind of jumped out. It's like, that's, as I was saying before, I also like the fact that there's a little nod to Fried by Julian Cope, you know, the kind of the toy truck on it. But I'm not the photographer in the band, and I'm not the chief designer in the band. So there's better stuff to come than that, I'll guarantee.
Nice. I mean, the clarity on it's great. Yeah. And it's like, you know, you see these pictures with AI that produce something. You'd never think the backstory was you found a truck in the garden.
No, absolutely. And funnily enough, the three of us out the band that work in the design business and photography and stuff. And Frank, our bass player, he's a photographer by trade. He teaches photography, and he thought it was AI, and it was literally iPhone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Little toy in the garden. And you know, every now and again when you take a picture on an iPhone, it's like, geez, that looks like really nice.
So how did the band start, mate? How did you guys get together?
Yeah, well, so the three of us had been in bands together, like in the 80s and things like that, with Alex and Nick, who were also in the band. And Frank's, as G mentioned earlier, Frank's like a new addition to the band, our bass player. We sort of split up when we were like 18, and then we all bumped into each other about 5 years ago in Liverpool. You know, we'd all sort of been in touch and all that type of thing, but we'd all bumped into each other, and we went, should we go back in the studio for a laugh? And it was a laugh, because that's what we're about. We're all mates and all that type of thing. But it started going really, really well, and we just thought, should we start writing stuff again? And then obviously COVID hit, and so the first record we basically recorded in lockdown. And we all like, I'm down south, the lads are up in Liverpool. So we're all doing our parts remotely and things like that. So that's how we got back together. And the name 033 comes from the length of time where we hadn't been together as a band. So it was 33 years. So we were from ground zero. So that's because you know what it's like with bands. You're thinking of all sorts of names, and our WhatsApp group was like a wash with like loads of strange names, and you just can't come up with anything. Then we just settled on 033. So that's how it came about, Andrew.
I'm where you imitate. I'm with you in Rockland. We used to the heavens. I'm with you in Rockland. Where you put our bodies.
The funny thing about it was totally by chance, really, because I hadn't seen a bunch of the guys for a long time. I got a phone call and it was kind of like, should we go for a pint? Now, if we had gone for a pint, we probably wouldn't be doing it. I said, a mate of mine's got a studio up the road. Why don't we, spend a day in the studio for old time's sake and bang a few things out and do a little recording and kind of socialise there? If we had just said, yeah, let's meet in town and have a pint, we could have quite easily just dispersed and not met each other for another 33 years,
Does this new material, does it resemble the sort of material you was writing back in the day, or have you moved on to, you've had 33 years of listening to different things and different influences, and
the necessity to write something new was we realized how bad we were in the 80s.
Yeah.
We re-recorded the songs, and even by adding sort of new technology to it and new sort of sounds, we tried to update it, and it was like, oh, that was really bad. Should we do this again, but write something new? And the whole thing stems out of, we ended up discovering a process and that worked with for new stuff. It's kind of, we ended up going, actually, that person brings this in, that person brings that in, and we just kind of clicked for a writing process.
The age thing worked well as well, because obviously, when you're kind of like young and you're in a band and you're trying to get a record deal, and you're kind of influenced by how do you do that. So it's kind of, the songs have got to be 3.5 minutes long. They've got to be, you're writing about this, that, and the other. And you essentially, I felt like what we were doing the first time as kids, we were trying to write to order to what we thought somebody might like in a big corporation.
Yeah.
Getting together now, and obviously it doesn't matter how long the song is, it doesn't matter how short it is, it doesn't matter if it veers off into a slightly different genre, because actually, primarily we're doing it for ourselves. And I think the first time around, and I think it goes for most bands, when you're young, you're kind of doing whatever you think you need to do in order to, get famous or whatever, get on top of the pops at the time. We're just doing what's kind of happening when we all get together, and it might turn out to be, a kind of moody, slow thing that's 8 minutes long, or it might be a 2-minute song influenced by the kind of more kind of punk elements of it, which you don't quite get on the new album, but certainly on the first one, it's quite a journey, really,
The first album, it feels a lot more kind of like groove orientated. That the drums and the bass, it just seems like a nice feel to it. Whereas the new album sounds a little bit more live sounding. Is that assessment fair, or is that just my ears playing up?
I think you're right. I think we were kind of getting, as Andy was saying, a kind of method of working together.
Yeah.
On the first one. And also kind of, I wouldn't like to say that we're kind of trying to define a style, but there was a lot of ideas going in the first album in order to work out what we were actually going to do. One of the things I was dead big on when we were doing that was trying to get, kind of, when people used to actually buy albums, there was a start and a finish, and you listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get that, and I think if you remember, if you listen back to it, there's little incidental stuff in between each of the songs, and like you used to get, when you buy an album in the kind of 70s or 80s, and you'd be
Yeah.
What's coming next kind of thing.
And Andy, me and Mark were talking about the album earlier in the week, and we said we could hear Bowie, Roxy, psychedelic first sort of influences. Are they key influences for you guys, or is that just our ears hearing what we think it sounds like? Are they big influences for you guys?
Yes, I mean predominantly, obviously. Throw a bit of Lou Reed and Scott Walker in there, and that's the vocal influences. Yes. However, musically, that, as I say, with the like of Gareth and Phil's into very much different music, and it becomes this mash of styles, of influences. So whilst something might sound a bit Roxy, underneath it is, as Gareth says, a bit of a punk edge or something. So we're combining like an extensive library of influences. I mean, obviously being old as well, I can only sing the range that I can sing now, so I find myself going into the sort of your Bowies and your sort of Roxy's more creamy, maybe.
I love it. There was one track I said to Phil, actually, you're giving it, I can't remember the name of it.
You probably can't pronounce it, that's why. It was the one I'm thinking of.
Was a Zet, Andy? Was a Zet?
Yes. Yeah. I've written that one down there. Of the latest album, I think Binary Life and Quasazet. I mean, you guys are younger than me and Andy, but I guess your palette of influences being, you mentioned Julian Cope earlier, and obviously that Liverpool kind of sound, that sort of indie new wavy thing. I mean, we're into the same things that you were into, psychedelic furs and everything. So I mean, it's a great sound.
You're talking about Vulcan Street.
Yeah.
The lyrics in that, even though they're slightly masked, but it's all about Vulcan Street was a place we used to rehearse in years ago. It's an old warehouse. And basically the words are all referring to various people that we came across in Vulcan Street. For example, and I do like this line, so I'm going to say, there was a story, Nigel out of Half Man Half Biscuit used to be the caretaker there.
Wow.
He'd just be behind the counter, and I was like 15, 16, and I walked in this place and Nigel's sitting there. He's unknown completely. It was before his first album came out.
Yeah.
Sitting behind the counter, and I'm 15, 16, and he's got this handmade t-shirt on, which he's just written in magic marker, "I am Lake Bala." And I just thought that was the weirdest thing. And this guy was like the most surreal thing I'd kind of seen up to. And I was like, what the hell? So I think the line in the song is, there's a half man behind the counter. He's telling me he is Lake Bala. Nice. Well, every single line in that song is about somebody.
Yeah.
Various people in Echo and the Bunnymen that we came across at the time. People Out the Teardrop Explodes we came across at the time. They're all in there,
Nice.
Well, at least you rehearsed in somewhere cool like Vulcan Street, and you could put that in a song. We rehearsed in Lower Wapping Conker.
That's for the next album, isn't it? That one.
Yeah. There's a half man behind the counter. He's telling me he's Lake Bala. Don't forget when we were young. Don't forget when we were young. If you close your eyes and pray real hard, you find you go back to the start. Don't forget when we were young.
Lower Wapping Conker.
So how did you guys get signed? I mean, obviously it's a journey. You got together, you did the first album, and then the second, signed second album. I mean, how did that development happen?
Don't know. We played it to some people and they said they loved it, and they didn't particularly mind the fact that we were slightly older either, which is a factor these days. A young group of guys who are putting stuff out in Liverpool, and They heard it, liked it, and said, do it, and they've let us do what we want, and that's it. Fine. Luminance Records.
Is there a main lyricist in you guys that's kind of, or is it a group thing? Because it sounds like it's a group thing going, but you guys had says.
Brandy writes the majority of the lyrics, yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, basically, sorry. Yes, basically, like we mentioned Nick there. Nick will write a poem or something, and I'll just see a rhythm in it, and I'll adapt that to be a set of lyrics. Vulcan Street, for example, Gareth wrote almost in its entirety, and I just added it kind of goes a bit Lou Reedy in the chorus, like, you know, lyrically. So I kind of added that bit. Or like Binary Life you mentioned, that would have been, I actually sat to the lads and said, right, I want to write a song about this. Let's have a conversation about people being on their phones, people being sort of absolutely obsessed with social media and things like that. And we just had a conversation, and little phrases like tapping through each other's lives was something Phil said, and that I'd just take that in and throw that in as a bit of a
Tell them about Better Together, though, Andy.
Oh,
and also the first name, because that's quite funny.
Better Together. Again, what happens on the previous album, for example, we'd have watched the documentary about DB Cooper. So it's like, that's fascinating. So we wrote a song called Skyjacker about that. Again, there was another one, Bernard Crowe. Basically, the guy who managed to help convict Charles Manson, because he was the only one that could prove that Charles Manson had committed a crime, and his sort of street name was Lots of Popper. So it was like that interesting story about, here's the guy that stood up as a witness. And then where we were going then?
Also, Manson was shit scared of Lots of Popper as well, which was quite interesting when you think of...
Yeah.
Quite a street dealer. So back to Better Together. Gareth had been reading Elton John's biography and stuff, and there was a fascinating sort of section in it that he forwarded on to me about Elton John's addiction and struggle with addiction all his life.
He wrote a letter, like a breakup letter to drugs, which is a brilliant read, actually. It's just like, so he actually did it as part of his healing process.
Yeah.
So we kind of paraphrased it as something, but the original title of it, Andy?
White Lines.
White Lines.
I mean, lyrics is an art form. I mean, you know, the lyrics these days seems very throwaway, but I mean, you know, I think for me, certainly, say, learning stuff from a song, say OMD, they wrap up something political or something historical in their lyrics, you know, whether it's Enola Gay or Louise Brooks or whatever, they do lyrics where it sort of makes you think or Google and find out the history behind it. Or there's other lyrics which I love, like Squeeze, like Up the Junction and stuff like that tell a story, and then it suddenly spins on its head, and it's like, wow, it's like, you know, it's so clever doing lyrics. Whereas today, I mean, I know I'm sounding really old, it just seems really bland that the songs these days, I couldn't quote any lyrics really from anything in the top 10 at all.
I have a bit of a theory and bugbear about modern music, and I challenge people. I say to them, name a great song that's less than 10 years old.
Yeah.
And people go blank, because I don't think since the likes of maybe Amy Winehouse or someone like that, there's no great songs. I mean, I can just imagine we're on our way to the old people's home, but I can't imagine this generation sitting there humming along or having a sing along to their contemporary music.
I think you guys have made a really good point. One of Mark and I's biggest frustrations, and Andy, I think there is some great stuff being made now, but it's not what people buy, and it doesn't get. So, a good friend of Mark's and mine says me and him are like a pair of truffle pigs trying to find new music. That's what we do. That's why we're talking to you guys, right? There's great stuff getting out there, but as Andy says, it doesn't get into the general conscience of most of the public, and they're just not getting the exposure, because I think most people appreciate decent music, but as Anne says, the last 10 years, I mean, Mark and I will probably name stuff because that's what we do, but we're a minority, as you say. The majority of people just seem to hear stuff that's just almost force-fed this stuff, and it's just not.
Well, this is the problem, because the model now is if you've got a kid who's on Instagram or something's got 750,000 followers, it also means that should we say the marketing department doesn't have to do as much work because it's already there on a plate for them.
Exactly that. I mean, your record companies now, apart from their network of distribution, bands record it themselves. They tend to do the artwork themselves. They tend to build up the fan base or their audience themselves. And the record company, basically all they do is make the product and distribute the product. Me and I suppose it was similar in a day. I guess in the 80s, me and Andy, we was in bands, and we nearly got signed. We nearly got signed to, I think, E&G Records and Deconstruction Records were looking to sign us, and they was like close to signing us, but they just said like, build up your audience a little bit more. And then, so I guess because there wasn't social media around then, the audience was like the footfall in the gigs. But now it's just like, okay, we need to see 500,000 followers on your Instagram. I
just don't think the music's as important.
For Christmas, we spoke to Sal Solo out of Classic Nouveau.
Oh, yeah.
And we remember Classic Nouveau back in the day, and their first two albums were kind of, good albums. And their third album was produced by Alex Sadkin, who did Duran Duran, Seven and the Ragged Tiger, and Thompson Twins, but they used up all the budget. They were signed to EMI. They'd used up all the budget, and basically EMI turned around and said, "Well, we can't promote it because you've used up all the budget," and they just dropped them. So I said to Sal Solo, I said, personally speaking, I think it was a bit premature for EMI to drop you at that point after the growth of the two albums and the third album dropping them. And he said a really interesting point. He turned around and said, we were signed to EMI and they just had other bands, so they just dropped us and then moved on to other bands, whereas Depeche Mode was signed to Mute and they was like on smaller labels, and they could afford to invest more in them because they didn't have a roster of artists to choose from.
Yeah, of course. But listen, EMI very nearly didn't put Colour of Spring out by Talk. That very nearly didn't see the light of day.
That'd be sacrilege.
Bigger, exactly. It's
Phil, any live dates tour coming up to promote the album?
Yeah. So we're, I think Gareth said before, the album comes out 2nd of February, Friday the 2nd. So on the 3rd, we're having a launch in Liverpool at a bar called Jacaranda, which is on Slater Street, which is right in town, right in the centre of Liverpool. It's a free gig, but it's limited capacity. So virtually all the tickets have gone now, so we've got to be pretty careful. But obviously anybody watching this, if they listen to our stuff and fancy coming down, literally there's hardly any tickets left. So people are going to have to move quick, basically, if they want to come down,
Is there going to be other gigs outside of Liverpool? I mean, you obviously rehearsed for one gig. Are you going to bring it down south?
I think so. I think, we want to get this out the way, Mark. And then there's a few bits and pieces that we're talking about for 2024, which we're in now, obviously. So there will be. So obviously check our social channel.
Again, another one of the interesting things that's changed since way back when you do it traditionally is when we realised we had to kind of do a launch, the process of recording, we've got our own studio, the process of recording, in the 80s, you'd go and you'd be running through the songs, wouldn't you, all day in your rehearsal space. Now you kind of write in direct into the computer. Now, even though we're all actually playing, there's not much rehearsal happens. So in some instances, some of the songs that we're doing live, we did 3 years ago, we had to learn them.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any kind of repetitive process in a rehearsal room. We'd be writing straight to tape, if you like. So it's like, what did we do on that? How did we do that? And that's been an interesting thing, because first time round, there wasn't any of that. You get to the stage where the songs were drilled into you and you were good to go. Now we're kind of having to pick through it and work out, what was there.
We need to see how it goes, because it's the first time we've gigged for 35 years. I haven't been on stage for 35 years. I mean, we're all confident in what we do, but it's just one of those. It's like, this is going to be amusing. Oh my God. Also, often, as Gareth was saying, when we write, the vocal you're hearing on the recording, on the album, is possibly only the second time I've sang that. So I've written it in the studio, gone, oh, what do you think of this, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, get in front of the mic and record it. And you do it in bits. You don't necessarily do it as a whole, I'm going to...
But most of those songs, in some cases, from literally inception to finish in less than a day. Here's a little idea, and then it gels, and then we just all work on it until it's done, and then leave it.
What we did on Riots,
that was all done in a day, yeah.
Background that I've got behind me, it's not a big, I'm not wearing a flower hat, but the background behind me is from the Riots track, and we literally, it was a Saturday, we went in at 10, our keyboard player had this little riff, just, you know what it's like, messing around, and we were all in the studio, and I had a bad hip at the time, Andy had a bad back or whatever, and we all used to talk about music and footy or whatever, and now we're talking about our ailments before we start recording and all that. But Alex had this little piano riff, and then we just started doing that. And as Gareth says, literally from 10 o'clock to about 6 o'clock, I think it was written, recorded, job done.
You don't have a word to say.
And guys, a big question to all of you. I mean, one of the things Mark and I do, which is why we've got you on, for example, is talking about new bands and artists you're loving right now. Is there anyone at all you've listened to in the last few months you've gone, oh, I like that? Or
for me, to be honest with you, Andy and Mark, obviously, Andy, I know both of you anyway, but that's what this channel's about for me. Like, a lot of the new music that I listen to is recommended by you guys. So, like, Magnetic Skies, Beautiful Machines, all of that type of stuff. You guys have introduced me to that. And that for me is the purpose of your channel, and getting it out to as many different people. Because if I didn't watch some of your stuff or know you guys and take influence from you, where am I going to find it? And that's why, this channel for me is so important to getting new music out there, as well as old classics and things like that. But you guys championing new music is superb, and that's how I find an awful lot of my stuff.
Oh, that's really kind. Thanks, Simon.
There's a band I've been listening to recently. Have you come across Tian Key?
No.
Right. Well, you should. It's Jar Wobble's two sons. And Wobble's kind of involved in it as well. He's playing bass on it as a kind of sideline. But it's essentially, if you imagine kind of, again, getting back to like Can, it's got that kind of vibe, but with traditional Chinese instruments in it as well. It's really good. Tian Kiai.
Right.
And I think the album's called, it's either the album or the single's called Red Mist. The single's certainly called Red Mist, but it's fabulous.
Anything for you, Andy?
I've had a bit of a weird one. In my car, I have a CD player. I have played nothing but Bowie since he passed away. And I've just got in that habit of
Nothing wrong with that,
the
mate.
entire catalogue on an iPod's plugged into my car type thing. And I'm just going over and over again, and you just don't get bored. It's just like each period. As for modern stuff, again, as Gareth says, it's all quite throwaway, and you don't also get much time to latch onto it. I mean, you just look at what's going on in advertising now at the moment, ELO, Chic and things like that. Everyone's going back to old stuff. Again, it's just that I'm a fan of the song, and I'm just not really getting songs now. And listen to you guys and do things like that.
Final question. It's an interesting one because Mark and I always kind of have an assumption of what you guys would have as a desert island dish. So if you could take one album of Desert Island, what would it be?
For me, it would be Shawaddy Waddy's Crazy Sick. No. It would be it'd be the Mid-Yaw first record with Ultravox. That would be mine. Vienna
album.
Yeah.
Great album, that.
Good choice.
Yeah, great choice. Great choice.
Under the Moon of Love, though. You've got to consider Shawaddy Waddy. You really do. The song that just makes me smile instantly, and the album that I adore is Young Americans.
Yeah.
And listening to Luther Vandross and his first backing vocals job going on in that, a little bit of John Lennon duoing and things like that, and it's just like I would never get bored of that album.
Yes, great shirt. Gareth?
Dark Side of the Moon. The only reason was I was thinking about it, and I think it's the album that I've bought the most and lost the most and took to places and all that. But yeah, it's a great album.
That is a brilliant album.
I think Vienna album is the album I bought the most. I must have about 8 copies of it.
Right.
Years and years ago, you were talking about EMI before, but I used to work for EMI for a number of years. And I worked with Midge, and it was one of the maddest things in the world, where like we were doing all of the radio plugging for one of his albums. And anyway, long story short, he said, "Are you coming to the gig in Shepherd's Bush?" And I went, "Oh, yeah." And I said, obviously, being a cheeky bugger, I went, "Any chance of drumming for you, Midge?" And he went, "What, sound check?" I said, yeah. So it was amazing, like playing with me Hero on Shepherd's Bush Empire, purely in a sound check. But it was incredible,
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. Great story. Guys, listen, brilliant to see you all. Wish you massive success for the album. Can't wait for people to hear it. Really glad you guys came in Electronic Cafe this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we will definitely see you in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, gents.
Cheers, guys. We love the album. Andy, what's the sound wave behind you, by the way?
That's my wedding song. It's actually the sound
wave.
Keith Richards.
Wow, that's awesome, mate. That's
it's a canvas, so I painted it and put on it and things. But yeah, it was sort of like an anniversary present to my missus, and that was our first dance. Make no mistake.
Amazing. Well, look, guys, great luck with the album. Guys, thank you for giving up your time this morning. Really,
guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Nice one.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Speak soon. Bye.
It might be 6, it might be 9, it might be 3. You got the combination lock, and I just need to find the key. It might be 4, it might be 1, it might be 9, it might be 2. I got a dialing code, but no such number as I gotten through. What's your number? What's your number? You got your tape, your eyes the way.
So that's it for our first episode of 2024. We hope you loved our chat with the rather fabulous ZERO33. I'm expecting great things from those guys. Phil, Andy, Gareth, thanks guys for coming on. It was a delight to have you on the EC. Can't wait to see the success that comes with the album launch. And I say, great things happening on the Electronic Cafe in 2024. Talking of great things, March the 16th, this year now. God, it's coming around fast. Electronic Cafe Live Volume 2. What a lineup we have. We have Peter Dugal, an amazing artist. We have Tiny Magnetic Pets, great band, support some great bands like China Crisis, OMD, etc. Then we've got the legend that is Wolfgang Fleur. Yes, the Wolfgang Fleur. And if that wasn't enough, a DJ set for the rather amazing Mark Reeder. So get your tickets for that at Club 229, 16th of March this year. We'll see you there, and we'll see you again very soon on another episode of the Electronic Cafe. Take care. Bye-bye for now.